Hi, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of our Global Leadership Exchange Women in Leadership Collaborative podcast. My name is Akemie Jones, and I'm the Assistant Director of Learning and Development for Recovery Innovations. And with me, I have.
Hello, everyone. I'm Joy Brunson in Subuga, and I also work for Recovery Innovations, and I am the Chief Operating Officer. Today, we are going to continue the theme that we started in our last podcast, the theme of ideas in action, inspiring to mobilize creative solutions. And today, we're going to be talking about find your leadership voice.
Finding our leadership voice. I think back to it was a long time. Not that I've been in this game for that long. The first time I noticed individuals started maybe listening to me as a leader was when I was in college. And, well, let me take that back. I was team captain for basketball. So maybe we could say that. I would say where I actually noticed it was when I started working at Taco Bell when I was in college. And I noticed that individuals would come to me for support, or they would ask questions, or they want to learn how to do certain things. And it resulted in me being promoted to a leadership position at Taco Bell. What about you, Joy? When did you first realize that, oh, snap, people are actually listening to me as a leader?
That is a good question. Probably somewhere around middle school, I will say. Just because like the schools that I went to were very, very small. And in middle school, I went to a one room school that had first through eighth grade, and I was the oldest. And so I was naturally like put into this leadership position to help out the younger grades, which was super fun for me. So I would say mine started a little bit earlier in middle school. Yeah.
Okay, middle school is early. Did you feel like you were acting as a leader, or it was just something you did without really knowing what it was?
It was just something I gravitated towards, I think, something that I just did. I was excited about being seen as someone who had, great ideas and
Mm-hmm.
I could help and all that because I'm one of four and I'm third. So typically at home, that was not my position. And I was obviously, I needed to follow after everybody else at home. So it was like the first opportunity that I can remember that I felt like, okay, like I can actually contribute
Mm-hmm.
and my voice actually matters and I can support others versus the other way around, feeling like I was the one who needed the support.
I think you bring up a good point here for us to sort of segue into how our leadership voices have evolved. Because for you it was middle school, and for me I was probably doing some things in around that time frame, but it really didn't start sticking out for me until I got to college. So as we're thinking about where we came from and where we are now, how has our leadership voice changed from the start of our careers to now? I think I know now in my career, I am more confident in my voice. I know what my voice is, and I'm not, I don't want to say eager. I think I'm more responsible with sharing my voice. So I guess younger Akimi always had to get it out, right? As I am older and more mature in the space, I recognize one, there's a lot to be said in silence. Leadership voice isn't always verbally talking, right? You can actually say a lot of things by saying nothing at all. And so finding those times where it is important for me to say something, where it is important for me to use my leadership voice, as well as identifying the times when I can use my leadership silence. That is probably the most how I've changed. It's just being more tactful and intentional and conscientious with how I use my leadership voice.
I like that because being a leader doesn't mean that you have to be the loudest in the room. You always have something to say. It's really about that respect factor and being able to shift the room if need be, not necessarily always having to be the one who brings about the change. So yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. Nice.
What about you?
So I've been thinking about this And I think finding my leadership voice goes all the way back to my mom. And mom, if you're out there watching, she will absolutely agree with this statement. I was that child that my mom tried to like shape the way that I was going, and I would always push back and say, why do I have to do it like that? I would quote her the Ralph Waldo Emerson quote of go where there is no path and leave a trail. Like that whole thing of I can do it differently and do it well. And so my mom and I bumped heads a lot because I wanted to do things differently.
Mhm.
But I think that goes into how I have developed in my leadership style. I have always been one to want to do things differently, but I think figuring out, similar to you, figuring out how to get that across in a way that is palatable, in a way that individuals kind of can understand the direction that we're going, slowing down to make sure we are all going together. I'm not out front, respecting everybody's time and space and energy. And so early on, I can remember distinct times in my career where I wanted to move into a leadership role, and those options were not afforded to me, is the way that I will phrase it. And a lot of feedback would come with just that collaboration and wanting to make sure that everyone is on the same page and really behind the actions and how it's articulated and not being the only one in the room, and also giving to other people's ideas and projects as well as getting from others. So those are all of the things that I really had to work on, making sure that I was bringing those ideas, but I also was making space for everyone else. And so I think I learned that early on and have really worked to make sure that comes out. But that's when I started to that I think that was the shift
Mhm.
for me from being my own individual. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it
Mhm.
well, it's going to be
Mhm.
great,
Mhm.
into like shifting into a leader that
Mhm.
really supports others. That was that shift for me.
It's almost like the shift, and I'm going to piggyback on what you're saying here because you're hitting on something important. As leaders, there is this point in our career or leadership stories where we shift from the team I, right, to the team we. And I'm a servant leader by heart, and by nature. So for me, it was that, okay, well, I'm no longer doing this just for the good of me. Like, it's not just me, myself, and I any longer. The things that I
Mhm.
say, the things that I do, the conversations that I have, when I choose to have them versus when I choose not to have them, all of those things tie into, am I serving my team well? Because respectfully, we know leaders, we do eat last. Plug for a
Mhm.
book. Leaders do eat last,
Yes.
and so I had to make that transition of how do I maintain my role as leader while still providing good support. And we touched on it a little earlier. I don't always have to have all of the solutions. I don't always have to say something. I think you said it. Going from when I actually have to contribute versus to when I vet something.
Mhm.
That's one of the skills that we've had to learn as leaders. When does my voice bring value versus when is my voice a hindrance possibly to my team's growth as well, is something else I've also had to learn. So as we're thinking about our voices, what's one word that you would use to describe your leadership voice today? For me, I believe I would say, I know it said pick one, so I'm gonna follow the
Come
instructions.
on,
I'm gonna
follow
pick
the
one.
rules,
I'm
follow
gonna
the
follow the
rules.
rules, but I'm a rule breaker, but I will follow the rules.
I am a rule
um,
follower.
I
One
love it.
word, one word.
I'm using one word to describe my leadership voice. I'm gonna have to say intentional. I'm very intentional about everything I do, but especially how I support others and in the manner in which I support others, how others see me so that there is buy-in for that support. And I have a question about that later. So I'm going to say intentional.
I like that one. I would agree with that. I will say my leadership voice overall, I will say, I know this is going to sound strange, but I will say respectful. And I say respectful because I want to make sure that when I speak, no matter who I'm speaking to
Mm-hmm.
or what I'm speaking about,
Mm-hmm.
that the end result has the opportunity for the other person to grow
Mm-hmm.
in any discussion that I'm having. I want to make sure that my voice is seen as a part of the solution. So I typically don't speak unless I have something I
Yeah.
think is relevant to say. And I'm also very respectful of every position because you never know who has the power in any room. I would say respectful. That the way I come across to everyone is very important to me.
I agree with that, Joy. That's a good segue into what I was mentioning before. It's sort of, what do people hear when they hear our voices? What do they see when they see us in leadership? And when they see us doing our leadership thing, is it a hindrance? Like, are they able to connect with us despite different backgrounds or tenure in leadership, or is it off-putting? So how do culture, identity, or lived experience influence how you lead and communicate? For this particular question, really, whenever I'm interacting with anyone, I diligently try to be aware that we are interacting from our own worldviews, personal experience. Like, we're bringing all of that stuff into every interaction we have with every single person. And that helps me to be more intentional with the words that I'm choosing, not closed off phrases, very collaborative phrases, especially if it is an environment in which you are needing to work on something or create something new or really come together to find a sweet spot. It's important that, despite what people see firsthand, because let's just be honest, people do make judgments based off of what we look like, that I'm still meeting people where they are despite those perceptions, and that I am creating that space for growth and development and those good conversations, and not the opposite. What about you, Joy?
So I would say, well, one, I definitely agree with that. How you want to show up in every room makes a complete difference. My thoughts are going back to, I did some executive coaching.
Mm-hmm.
During that process, I did a 360 survey of like 40 something people. I don't recommend doing that many. You get a lot of feedback.
All the
I had
feedback.
like 8 pages of feedback. I had to take like a full 2 days off to like digest all of it because, people, I asked people to be honest and they were honest. But one of the things that I learned from there is about noise, leadership
Mm-hmm.
noise, and how your voice can become a noise in the system and how your voice can start to be perceived as a noise in the system, kind of like just there, not meaningful, actually making things harder. And that noise can be spoken about even when you're not in the room, and your ideas and your voice doesn't carry any weight. It
Mm-hmm.
just becomes like, ugh, like
Noise.
again. So that was something that I learned through that process, and something that I'm very mindful of. Just because I can say something, should I say something, and wanting to make sure that it's the right time to say something, and also that, again, going back to that respect piece. So I think that question brings up that for me,
Mm-hmm.
and how important it is to not just become a noise in the process and a nuisance in the process, but actually contribute to moving forward. And if you've become a noise,
Mm-hmm.
just like any noise, you hear all the time. Someone says, now that we're all virtual, someone says, "Oh, sorry, they're cutting my lawn or they're doing
Right.
construction. It's
Mute.
noise. Sorry,
Let me mute.
let me mute, let me shut that down."
Mm-hmm.
It's very easy to fall into that area where you are just going to be shut down, shut out. And it's important to be able to read those cues and understand how to use your voice to be productive and not just to add noise to the system.
Absolutely. One of the quotes that I live by is just because I can doesn't mean that I should. And that is definitely something to think about when we're doing all things in leadership. Like, yeah, I have an answer to said posed question, but should I be the one that gives the answer? And based on the forum and the space and place, there may be no need for me to give an answer. It might be someone else that sort of needs to step up to the plate. So I think that's definitely a good thing to point out, especially as we continue to grow and develop as leaders. So one of our last questions as we start coming to a close here is, what is some advice that we would give a woman who is still
Mhm.
figuring out how to speak with confidence, meaning like how she's still in this sort of phase of finding her leadership voice, and she's at that point where she's like, okay, I at least need to speak with confidence so I can be heard, and some value can be placed on the things that I'm saying. So Joy, what is your advice to those individuals that are still seeking their voice?
Flashing back to the Ralph Waldo Emerson quote, the do not go where the path may lead. Instead, go where there is no path and leave a trail.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a value add
Mm-hmm.
when you are leaving a trail for others to follow. That is a value add. To think about your voice and confidence and all of that, it takes time. That trail is going to take time to knock all the weeds out of the way,
Mm-hmm.
make sure it's wide enough for everybody. Like these things aren't built overnight.
Mm-hmm.
And so oftentimes I see some of the mistakes that are made is that we want things too fast.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of just consistently following through with what I know and leaving that trail and understanding that people are going to start following,
Mm-hmm.
but wanting to push out there too quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And then it becomes noise, and then you turn to follow someone else. So what I would say is it's all about the value add. What is it that you want to be known for?
Mm-hmm.
And then also how long are you willing to give in order to be respected as a leader? Is those two things put together that will start to define your leadership and
Mm-hmm.
then what your voice is.
Of course, I agree with what you are saying. And so mine, I think, is just a part of that development process, because you hit on something key. No one becomes a good leader overnight, right? There's a lot of trips, pitfalls. You have to go backwards, sometimes to go forward, sometimes you have to sit still. So, and no two individuals' leadership journeys are the same. So I would say my two pieces of advice would be to lean into the discomfort. Don't shy away from it. Don't It's okay to be afraid. Like, I'm never going to tell someone not to be afraid. I'm not going to invalidate how one may feel about finding confidence, but lean into it. Because if you've noticed, hopefully over the course of your life, that at least we're hoping, every difficult lesson, every hardship has hopefully catapulted or at least taught you a lesson of how to move forward in your journey. So as you are seeking confidence, think about the moments where you don't feel confident and why. What are the things about that particular moment or this particular leadership moment where you're saying, I don't know, I don't, how will they even listen to me? I'm not, as Joy said, I'm not even sure if I'm bringing value. Don't be afraid to say it, of course, respectfully and being mindful of the space. But if you have something to say that you feel will bring value, don't silence yourself, right?
Mhm.
Lean into the discomfort and the unknowing of people may like what I say or they may not like what I say, but they're never going to have an option to have an opinion if you don't say it. Right. And then from there, you take your feedback, or, if they come back and they say, yeah, Akemie, I'm sorry, there's no value there. And there are some meetings, respectfully, in which people are very blunt and honest about their responses. It's then I
Mhm.
have to take that feedback and say, okay, well, that didn't land in the way that I thought it would. Let me go back to the Akemie workshop. So in the event I have to have a conversation like this again, I'm able to do it and it land where I need it to. Sometimes we can also check in with the individuals that are in our meetings, if you have relationships with them, or if they're within your organization, or if they're at least willing to have a conversation, or if you have a mentor, say, hey, I offered this solution. It didn't quite seem to land like I wanted it to. Was it the delivery, or can you provide me some guidance on how in this particular space my comments or my feedback can land better? And listen to those that provide feedback. And I'm a believer of if it applies, it applies, and if it doesn't, let it fly. But there's nothing wrong with seeking feedback on how to do something better, especially if you're in a collaborative space. And really, everything we do as leaders is collaborative. So having that pulse check, I think that would be. I know I said two things, but I think that's where I'm going to end it. I think that would be my advice: lean into the discomfort, and don't try to go too fast. Right? This
Yeah.
is a journey, and journeys, they take time, and a leadership journey is an undefined amount of time for every individual that chooses to embark on it. So embrace your journey, and don't compare it to others people's journeys. So Joy, how would you like to close us out today? That's all.
Well, I will say thank you for being with us. We are excited to see you at the Women in Leadership match in early June. And we will continue to have these conversations throughout that workshop and also do more deeper conversations. So we're just really excited to continue this and build the collaborative where we are supporting each other. So thank you.
Thank you everyone for joining. We'll see you soon.